Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of MSP Sales Podcast. Today I'm joined by Allison Trisco and Jake Carroll. Allison is our Chief Sales Officer, and Jake is our VP of Sales. Myself, I'm Tim McNeil, and Rob won't be joining us today, so we thought we'd bring in the next best thing.
Nice. Happy to be
how are
here.
you guys doing today?
I'm doing good.
Yeah,
Lots going on.
yeah.
Lots
No,
going
very
on.
good. Yeah. Thank God it's Friday. At least Friday.
Thank God we're headed toward a holiday, that's for sure.
That is true too. That is true too. So look, on this week's podcast, we wanted to discuss a subject that we brought up in our marketing peer group that we have recently started with OSR Manage, specifically around the elimination of non-competes and how that is creating a whole subset of opportunities for MSPs out there. Because I'll pick on the healthcare industry specifically. You don't now doctors and nurses they can get out of their arrangements much easier than they could previously, and that's spawning some specialty groups, especially where I live in upstate New York. And we thought it was relevant enough to bring it up on our marketing peer group yesterday, and it really spawned a couple of really nice conversations. So I guess, Jake, I'll kick it over to you first because you kind of led the charge in
Yeah.
our peer group. What are some of your thoughts on this?
The bigger implications of the FTC removing non-compete clauses always has to do with the flexibility of people now to pursue opportunities with other companies, whether that be competitors or to go off and start their own business, without the threat of being sued by a larger company, to not do that, right? Typically, a non-compete clause would say, hey, look, after you leave this company, you can't go work for a competitive company for X period of time. They tended to be loosely worded to cover the company for the most broad and vague conditions possible to restrict the movement of employees, and they were struck down. So the implication is that with that now being banned, that these people who otherwise wouldn't be moving around could be. So for MSPs that are now working either with those large healthcare providers or could have the opportunity to work with new businesses that are spawning as a result of it, is like, are you ready for this, right? Are your relationships with your current customers strong enough at the personal level that you could survive if someone really important to that business moved on, right? So those are some of the things that people need to be aware of. The other thing is following your most important contacts of your current customers when they do, and if and when they do leave, and where they end up. Like, could you then be brought in with them to do the same kinds of things you are now? So there's some pretty exciting sales opportunities, but there's also risks with it too.
Yeah, and to that point, I just wanted to give a quick example of a scenario that happened personally with me. I've got a neighbor who lives right next to me, and he's a doctor. His whole family, they're in the healthcare field, whether they're doctors or nurses. His sister, who is a nurse, broke off, started a specialty facility specifically focused on Botox. And just where I'm located in upstate New York, there happens to be a hospital locally as well. And she was able to pull away a couple doctors from there. Even 6, 8, 10 months ago, that would have been absolutely unheard of, right? So it's just kind of a somewhat unique circumstance that is unfolding in front of us for specialty groups. So
yeah. Allie, you were talking yesterday about some of the challenges that brings up, either in terms of messaging or pursuit. What you had seen in a specific example of that too, if I remember right?
Yeah. So the example with me was my sister-in-law, who's a nurse anesthetist, and she was linked to one hospital. Now she's linked to more than one. She can move around. She can hang a shingle. She can get other people to come with. The messaging with that, to your follow-up question, is regardless of the type of vertical that you're marketing to, you want to make sure your content is specific to that industry. Right. So you can pivot, you can take a look at that as a new, part of the industry to go after, to do with healthcare, pivot your messaging to it.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Sure.
And to that point, the part of the conversation that we had, and this is true with any campaign or anytime you're going after a specific industry or vertical, making sure that messaging is really on point, right? And part of our conversation gravitated towards the AI aspect of the world that we live in today. Specifically, if you are going to venture into a field or an industry like this, or start trying to find companies like this, not everybody knows how to put that wording in correctly, right? So that's where using some sort of AI tool, whether it's a ChatGPT 4 or we happen to have one here called Selma. These tools give you the ability to create that messaging in a very systematic and specific way to push that out to the verticals that you're going after. So you don't have to. I think we've talked about this whether internally here at OSR, and I think we brought it up on a podcast at one point around how you don't have to be a content writer by background anymore. You can really create tremendous amount of things and go after new verticals, new industries that you may not have been familiar with later, but with the help of but with the help of AI, now you can tailor make those messages for people, and that is creating a unique situation for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So in terms of where we think it's going to have a positive impact for MSPs is making sure that if your champion or someone that inside the companies that you're working with is moving elsewhere, that you can go with them into their new client. I mean, that's really important. And in terms of from a marketing and sales standpoint, the sale doesn't end when you bring on a new customer. Obviously, it continues. By the same token, our contacts within our customers need to expand, right? One up above the person that you're working with, one below the person you're working with, potentially two peers. Because the opportunity that's generated by, say, one of your champions leaving a company that you're working with, where you might be able to sell to a new company, you're also vulnerable to the new person that's coming in, right, to take over that role. So while there's opportunity, there's also threats. So you want to make sure that from a relationship standpoint, that you're shoring up your contacts within your customer bases, right? And there's more than one person in the company that understands your value. As most of our MSP partners are dealing directly with, medium and small size business owners, probably less chance that they're going to move around. But as your ideal customer profile expands into larger accounts, chances are you're going to have far more contacts within the organization that you need to manage. And in that case, in the case of where people are becoming more mobile, you're going to want to expand that relationship network. And you may be able to do that from your first contact when you're selling, but more likely you'll try to build those relationships as your engagement moves along. That might mean you have to be more active in LinkedIn. That might mean you need to have more people involved in meetings at the company, but just work on expanding your relationships within your customer accounts so that you can withstand any threat that comes from mobility from your existing client contacts moving on, but then also to be able to track those folks when they leave. We had an example yesterday where the only contact information one of our MSP partners had on their main contact within an account were all company phone numbers, company emails. So they didn't have a personal email. They didn't have any personal social media contact with that person. So being intentional about database build out and contact build out within clients, both from personal and a professional way, can help you withstand some of the pressure that may come on you if people are moving, but also allow you to be more fluid in reaching out and expanding your sales territory if they move on to another company.
Well, and the other part is too, don't just assume that because these people potentially now can break off, don't look at them just as, well, but they're a startup, right? Because the point here is that they can branch off, bring 3 others with them, 4 or 5 may branch off, all come together. So are they a startup in a sense? Yes, but they already have multiple players involved.
Yeah. That's a huge one, to me at least. That's a really big aspect. I mean, I think there's a very popular sometimes misconception that just because you're a new company, that means that you're not going to be the right size for an MSP looking to hit their minimum device count. And in a few scenarios that I've seen or heard of, just within the last, I mean, we're talking within the last 60 days. I'm assuming most people out there listening to this, they're looking for a device minimum of in the 10 to 20 range. And I know of a couple of these specialty places that have opened up, and they've already started out with around 15 computers. So it's just it's a weird niche market that is becoming available right in front of us.
Yeah, I think it depends more on mindset, right? Like, what's the intention with the business? There's some people that are going to leave big companies just to go off on their own and be an independent, provider, right? There's others that are going to leave with the full intention of building a big practice. And if they're breaking off with another partner, or they're starting up a business and there's seed funding and their intention is to grow fairly significantly, or they've got current clients lined up, then I think if you project where that company could be and you can grow along with them, that's different than someone who's just going to go off and practice on their own, whatever field they're in. So I think it's in an ideal customer profile, like any other thing, it's intended to make sure you're pursuing the right kind of clients. But I think to a certain degree, you need to understand that, what's this client look like in a year, 2 years? Will they be my ideal customer profile within a short period of time? And is that their intention? So you can decide whether you're not to pursue or not.
And the thing is, too, the other thing is, keeping in mind when we say specialty medical, the verticals that actually what falls into those verticals, right? It could be urology, it could be specialty medical, could be plastic surgeon, it could be, Botox specialists, it could be, there's a lot of different things that fall under that range of specialty medical.
And just to clarify, and I think I may have mentioned it before, I mean, yes, we are picking on medical quite a bit on this specific podcast or this conversation, but it doesn't mean that there aren't plenty of other industries where this is happening in a very similar fashion. So,
yeah, in tech in particular. So if you're a company that happens to be in an area, if you're in Austin, Texas, if you're in the Technology Triangle in North Carolina, if you're here in upstate New York in Tech Valley, or if you're in Boston or any of the major cities where tech is big and now the competitive handcuffs are kind of off, there's going to be other opportunities for companies that are going to spawn out of those industries, and there's certainly going to be pretty high level executives or managers and directors that may move off into other companies for sure in all those industries.
And I do think, we're talking about the non-compete side of a relationship between an employer and an employee. It's also very important to note that the NDA side, the non-disclosure side, that still holds water. It's still rock solid. So, there was a conversation that came up on the peer group yesterday from the standpoint that somebody voiced a question, but it was almost like a concern around, well, does that mean that they can just walk with all of our stuff? And that's still very cut and dry, very black and white. You can't just do that. It's not the way it goes. You can't just take proprietary information and go and copy that and start something.
No.
However, there is more flexibility in the non-compete where, if you leave a company, you can't go to a competitor for a year or 2 years or whatever that may look like. That's what's opened up, just so everybody understands out there.
Yeah, be aware. Our jobs as sales organizations is to, acquire new customers, but then when we have them, it's to fend off competitors, extend our offerings within our customer bases, and make sure that they're fully taken care of. And one of the best ways to do that is make sure you expand your outreach and that you're connected to people, whether they're currently with the company, with another company after they leave, and to know also where did they come from. So just getting to understand where people's career trajectory has taken them, that got them to working with you, to understanding where they might go next, is a really good way to stay on top of your customer base as they start moving around a little bit.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, I think from my end, I think we've really talked about the important parts of what was brought up on the marketing peer group yesterday. I guess Ellie or Jake, is there anything else you wanna add before we part ways?
I would just say one of the more valuable assets in your company is your database of names, and the more that you can expand that, curate it from a variety of different sources, right? You used to be able to just have your customer list and curate it from within, but I think now there's more of an opportunity to gain more information about what's going on with your clients and any other people inside the business from LinkedIn, from socials, and a variety of other different sources, and just make sure that you know that that database is a living, breathing part of your company. That's a super important asset. And the FTC ruling on non-competes is just one example of why taking great care of that asset is really important.
And I would just say again, just the important aspect of any industries that you're dealing with, just make sure you don't come across as generic. If you're talking about, member data with a golf course, or patient data with healthcare, or whatever that might look like, change the messaging up. And to Jake's point, stay on top of LinkedIn, stay on top of your contact database, build the ideal 250 list, and make sure you have some kind of marketing going on.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, Jake, Allison, thanks for your time today.
Yeah.
You'll find this podcast
That's a
along
wrap.
with all.
Happy weekend. Yeah.
Well, you'll find this podcast along with all of our other MSP sales podcasts on all of the platforms out there, to include YouTube. If you have any questions, or if there's any topics you would like us to discuss in the future, feel free to reach out to us. We're always happy to take those requests and talk through any sales scenarios, or even some marketing scenarios that pop up that we can add some value to. So with that, Jake, Ellie, have a good weekend. Thanks for being on.
Take care, guys.
See ya. Take care, guys.